Welcome back to Amara's Good Stuff. Today, we begin the incredible story of Merlin, the wise wizard of Camelot. This chapter explores Merlin's origins, his early adventures, and how cleverness and magic shaped his destiny. Merlin was born under mysterious circumstances. Legends say his mother was a mortal woman, and his father a powerful spirit or demon, giving Merlin unique gifts from birth. From the moment he could walk, Merlin showed unusual abilities. He could predict events, understand the language of animals, and sense things invisible to others. His parents were amazed but also cautious, knowing that his cleverness and magical powers could bring both wonder and danger. As a child, Merlin wandered the forests and mountains, learning from nature itself. He discovered that rivers whispered secrets, trees could teach patience, and animals offered clever solutions to everyday problems. Every day was an adventure, and every challenge became a lesson in strategy, courage, and insight. One day, young Merlin encountered a fox trapped in a hunter's snare. While other children might have run away, Merlin carefully studied the trap. Using a combination of clever thinking and magical ability, he freed the fox without hurting it, and even learned a secret about tracking movement in the forest. From that moment, animals began to trust Merlin, becoming his guides, friends, and sources of wisdom. Merlin's cleverness extended beyond animals. He could solve puzzles, invent clever devices, and even make simple spells that amazed those around him. Villagers whispered about the boy with the strange knowledge, some fearing him, some admiring him, and others coming for guidance. Merlin learned early that cleverness alone was not enough. He had to pair it with kindness, patience, and ethical thinking. During these early years, Merlin also had visions of the future. He foresaw great events in Britain, including the rise of a young king who would bring peace and justice. These visions guided his actions, helping him make decisions that balanced magic, cleverness, and responsibility. Merlin's early adventures teach children that being clever is about observing, thinking ahead, and understanding the world. Magic alone does not solve problems. Wisdom, creativity, and ethical choices are equally important. By helping animals, solving problems, and learning from nature, Merlin prepared himself for the epic journey that would one day lead him to Camelot. And so, the early life of Merlin is filled with cleverness, magical discoveries, and important lessons. His story reminds us that preparation, observation, and ethical thinking set the foundation for greatness. Thank you for joining us on this beginning chapter. Stay tuned to Amara's Good Stuff as we continue Merlin's epic adventures in the next chapter, where he begins his magical training and meets the mystical creatures that will shape his destiny. Welcome back to Amara's Good Stuff. Today, we continue the epic journey of Merlin, exploring his magical training and the mentors who helped shape him into the wise wizard of Camelot. As Merlin grew older, his powers became stronger, and his cleverness more refined. He needed guidance to control his abilities, so he sought out the greatest wise men, druids, and mystical creatures of the land. These mentors taught him not only magic but also clever thinking, ethics, and patience, essential skills for any wizard who would one day advise kings. Merlin studied the natural world, learning the language of birds, trees, rivers, and stars. His mentors challenged him with puzzles, enchanted trials, and clever exercises that tested both mind and heart. One day, a druid presented Merlin with a simple-looking stone that held powerful magic. Merlin had to solve riddles, observe carefully, and think creatively to unlock its secrets. This taught him that cleverness, observation, and thoughtful planning could reveal even hidden truths. During this time, Merlin also encountered mystical creatures, talking animals, dragons, and spirits of the forest. Some were mischievous, testing his patience and cleverness, while others became allies, teaching him valuable lessons. A clever fox, a wise owl, and a loyal hawk often accompanied him on journeys, offering advice, guidance, and clever solutions to obstacles he faced. Merlin's training was not only about magic, His mentors emphasized ethics, responsibility, and careful decision. They taught him that cleverness without wisdom could be dangerous, and that true power comes from using knowledge to help others. These lessons would guide Merlin throughout his life, especially when he would meet young Arthur and face the challenges of Camelot. Did you know? Merlin's story teaches kids that cleverness must be paired with ethics, patience, and observation. Solving problems creatively is important, but using cleverness responsibly is what truly makes someone wise. By the end of his training, Merlin had mastered incredible spells, gained insights into the future, and developed an unbreakable connection with nature. His cleverness was unmatched. But he also learned humility and kindness, qualities that would make him not just a powerful wizard, but a trusted advisor, teacher, and friend to kings and common folk alike. And so, Merlin's magical training prepared him for the great adventures ahead, guiding kings, solving impossible challenges, and using cleverness, magic, and wisdom to protect the kingdom. Thank you for joining us on this magical chapter. Stay tuned to Amara's Good Stuff for Chapter 3, Merlin Meets Young Arthur, where the clever wizard begins his legendary role as mentor and guide. Welcome back to Amara's Good Stuff. Today, we step into one of the most famous parts of Merlin's story, his meeting with the boy who would one day become King Arthur. Merlin had long foreseen in visions that a young, humble boy would rise to bring peace and justice to Britain. This boy would not come from riches or power, but from simple beginnings. Merlin understood that cleverness and destiny often come in unexpected forms, and he prepared carefully for this moment. Arthur at the time was just a boy living under the care of Sir Ector, believing himself to be nothing more than a ward. He was kind, curious, and full of questions about the world. Merlin saw the boy's potential and decided to become his secret teacher. Merlin didn't begin with magic or grand spells. Instead, he taught Arthur through everyday experiences, turning challenges into lessons. One day, Merlin transformed Arthur into a bird, allowing him to see the world from above and understand freedom, perspective, and cleverness in flight. Another day, he turned Arthur into a fish, teaching him about adaptability and how cleverness helps even in dangerous waters. Each magical transformation wasn't just for fun. It was Merlin's clever way of teaching Arthur about leadership, responsibility, and problem-solving. These lessons prepared Arthur for challenges ahead without him even realizing it. But the true test of Arthur's destiny came with the famous sword in the stone. After King Uther's death, Britain was left without a ruler. Merlin, foreseeing the boy's destiny, orchestrated a magical test. A sword embedded deep in stone, enchanted so that only the true king could draw it out. Noblemen, warriors, and knights tried with all their strength, but none could budge the sword. Then came Arthur, not with pride or power, but with humility. Thinking he was merely helping his foster brother retrieve a sword, Arthur pulled and the blade slid out effortlessly. The crowd was stunned, and Merlin, watching from the shadows, smiled knowingly. Merlin's clever plan revealed the true king not through strength, but through character, humility, and destiny. From that day, Arthur began his journey to becoming the great king of Camelot. And Merlin, with his clever guidance and magical wisdom, stood by his side as advisor and protector. Did you know? The story of Merlin and Arthur teaches children that cleverness is not about showing off power, but about patience, humility, and learning from experience. Arthur's rise wasn't just destiny, was shaped by Merlin's clever lessons and guidance. And so, the bond between Merlin and Arthur was formed, one that would shape the fate of an entire kingdom. Thank you for joining us on this legendary chapter. Stay tuned to Amara's Good Stuff for Chapter 4, The Sword in the Stone and the Rise of Camelot, where we explore Arthur's early reign and Merlin's clever role in building the legendary Round Table. Welcome back to Amara's Good Stuff. In our last chapter, Merlin guided young Arthur to his destiny, drawing the enchanted sword from the stone. Now we'll see how that single moment set in motion the rise of Camelot, one of the most famous kingdoms in all of legend. When Arthur first pulled the sword from the stone, many nobles refused to believe that a boy of humble birth could be king. They argued, they shouted, and many knights challenged Arthur, insisting he must prove himself. But Merlin, with his calm voice and clever reasoning, reminded them that destiny chooses kings, not bloodline or riches. Arthur, though nervous, never let pride take over. He showed humility and fairness, which won the hearts of the common people. While some nobles resisted, the people rallied around him, and soon Arthur was crowned king. Merlin knew that a kingdom cannot thrive on destiny alone. It needed justice, fairness, and unity. So, he helped Arthur form the Knights of the Round Table. Unlike other councils where the richest and strongest sat above the rest, Merlin suggested a round table so that every knight would be equal, no head, no foot, only fairness and unity. Arthur's knights were brave and noble: Sir Lancelot, Sir Gawain, Sir Percival, and many more. Each took an oath to protect the weak, serve with honor, and place justice above personal gain. These oaths made Arthur's court legendary, and Camelot grew into a place of peace and wonder. But Camelot was not only about knights and battles, it was a place of learning, storytelling, music, and hope. Farmers prospered, children played safely, and travelers came from faraway lands to witness the justice of Arthur's reign. Still, not all challenges were behind them. Merlin, always watching with his keen wisdom, warned Arthur that dark times would come. Enemies from outside Britain threatened Camelot, while jealousy and ambition sometimes brewed within. But for every trial, Merlin offered guidance. One of the clever ways Merlin helped Arthur was through strategy. He didn't just rely on magic, he taught Arthur how to read people, how to listen to his knights, and how to use wisdom instead of brute force. For example, when two rival lords threatened war over land, Arthur wanted to ride into battle. But Merlin whispered, "Sometimes words can save more lives than swords." And so, Arthur mediated a peace, proving himself not only a warrior but a just ruler. As Camelot grew, so did its legends. Travelers told tales of the brave boy who pulled the sword from the stone, of the wizard who could see the future, and of a kingdom where fairness ruled. Did you know? The Round Table is one of the most famous symbols in all of mythology. It represents equality, fairness, and the idea that true strength comes from unity, not power over others. That's a lesson that still inspires people today. And so, Camelot stood tall, glowing with hope and promise. Merlin's cleverness and Arthur's courage had built something extraordinary together. But their journey was far from over, for in the shadows, new challenges were waiting, and destiny had even greater tests ahead. Thank you for joining us for this exciting chapter. Stay tuned to Amara's Good Stuff for Chapter 5, Merlin's Prophecies and the Quest for Excalibur, where we'll uncover how Merlin's visions shaped the future and how Arthur came to wield a sword even greater than the one from the stone. Welcome back to Amara's Good Stuff. Last time, Arthur rose as king, guided by Merlin's wisdom, and Camelot began to flourish. But every legend has its trials, and Merlin's visions of the future revealed that Arthur would need something more than courage and justice. He would need a sword worthy of a true king. You may remember the sword Arthur pulled from the stone. It was powerful and enchanted, yes, but as Camelot grew, the sword grew weary. In battles and conflicts, its blade began to chip, and Merlin knew that this weapon was not meant to last forever. He told Arthur, "The sword in the stone gave you your crown, but the sword you seek now will protect your crown." And so began the quest for Excalibur. Merlin led Arthur and a small group of knights on a journey deep into the mists of Avalon, a mystical realm said to lie between the human world and the land of spirits. The way to Avalon was dangerous, filled with forests where time twisted strangely, rivers that whispered secrets, and mists that played tricks on the mind. But with Merlin's guidance, they pressed on. One night, while camping by a silver lake, Merlin spoke of his prophecy. "A sword forged not by man, but by the Lady of the Lake, awaits you. Only when you prove your heart pure and your rule just will she grant it to you." The next morning, Arthur approached the lake. Its waters shimmered like glass, reflecting the sky as though it were a mirror. Suddenly, a hand rose from the water pail, elegant, and holding a sword of dazzling light. This was Excalibur, gleaming with magic beyond imagination. Arthur reached for the sword, but before his hand could touch it, the Lady of the Lake herself appeared. She was radiant, with flowing robes like waves of water, and eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. She tested Arthur with questions. Will you wield this sword for power, or for justice? Will you raise it for glory, or for peace? Will you protect only the strong, or also the weak? Arthur, humbled and sincere, answered with honesty. I will wield it for justice, for peace, and for all who need a protector. Satisfied, the lady placed Excalibur in his hand. Instantly, Arthur felt its power. It was lighter than air, yet stronger than steel. The blade shimmered with runes, and its scabbard carried a hidden gift. Whoever wore it would never bleed from wounds. Merlin, smiling quietly, knew this moment would become one of the greatest in Arthur's story. For, with Excalibur, Arthur was no longer just a boy king. He was a legend in the making. But Merlin's prophecies were never all bright. That same night, as the knights celebrated, Merlin wandered away to gaze at the stars. He saw visions of betrayal, battles, and the eventual fall of Camelot. Though it weighed heavy on his heart, he said nothing, for destiny must unfold as it will. Back in Camelot, Arthur returned with Excalibur, and the people rejoiced. Word spread across kingdoms that the young king wielded a blade of unmatched power. Enemies hesitated to attack, and allies grew eager to join his cause. Camelot shone brighter than ever, a beacon of hope across the land. Did you know? Excalibur is often confused with the sword and the stone, but in many legends they are separate. The sword and the stone proved Arthur's right to rule, while Excalibur represented his ability to protect that rule and maintain peace. And so, the legend of Excalibur began, and with it, Arthur's reign grew stronger. Yet Merlin, ever watchful, carried the weight of his visions, for even the greatest sword cannot stop the shadows of fate forever. Thank you for joining us for Chapter 5 of our Merlin story. Next time on Amara's Good Stuff, we'll continue with Chapter 6. The Knight's Quests and the Rise of Lancelot, where new heroes join Camelot's tale and new adventures bring both glory and danger.